Thank you. Thanks, Sue, for inviting us both. We're going to do a presentation that will talk a bit more about why there is still bullying in midwifery. Like you said, Sue, there is a trigger warning. So this talk and our published book report contains frank accounts of bullying. So obviously people that have attended have read the title, so they know that anyway. But if they do feel unsafe, they can just take a step out. Also, when reading the book, you're completely right. It's really hard work reading through the book. It can be very triggering for people, especially if they've experienced bullying. And dipping in is quite useful for a lot of people. Okay. So my experience, like you say, I was a midwife. I was a midwife for 17 years before I realised, I was a clinical midwife for 17 years before I realised that the practice of immediate core clamping wasn't evidence-based, and set about changing it. And for the next 12 years, I was systematically and chronically bullied until in 2017, actually, I left a profession that I absolutely adored and still do. I knew that all the strategies that were put in place to protect us when we were bullying didn't work, because I tried all of them. And I also knew that I wasn't on my own. So along with another person who isn't a midwife, Danny Griffiths, we set up a private Facebook support group called Say No to Bullying in Midwifery. It has strict ground rules. We try and protect people. They have to answer questions when they first come in, which are immediately deleted, to try and protect the people in there, because we do sometimes get voyeurs, because the bullies often join the group as well. We need to make sure that we keep talking about bullying, because if we do nothing, nothing will ever change. We aim for the group to be self-managed, really. We have one admin, but it's self-managing, so that we advise people to give an anonymous status, and they will get support from and advice from other members of the team, which is fantastic, all the members of the group. We started in 2017, and we now have over 2,000 members.
Hi, I'm Deborah Hughes, and also in April 2017, it must have been some sort of zeitgeist. I, along with Angie Barrett, founded the Midwives Haven, which is a support group of the Association of Radical Midwives. It's a support network, and this is the website, the picture on the website, ARM's website, and we aim to support midwives undergoing investigation, or student midwives undergoing investigation. About 70% of the time, this involves the Nursing Midwifery Council, about which more later, but we also have represented and helped students at university level, or and also support people who have been under investigation by trusts or being bullied.
So the Say No to Bullying group it's been running since 2017, and then in 2000, thank you, a bit bigger, yeah. And then we've actually got over 4,200 members, not 2,000. In October 2021, another midwife set up a petition to request resources for midwifery, which was also followed by the March for Midwives group, who set up as a campaign. And I thought, with our group, we could actually support their work and I asked the question, why do midwives leave? This was in October 2021. The tsunami of reports that came through, there were devastating accounts was received. My inbox was just absolutely overflowing. And I realised that most of the accounts were really, really devastating, and that they needed to be heard. So I promised the group that we would put all the words together and try and get these words over to the people that could change things. So it was about facilitating change, really. We ended up with a portfolio of accounts which were over 140,000 words. I did share them with the chief midwife, who also read a small proportion of them that were anonymised. All the reports have been completely anonymised right from the beginning, so that nobody could be identified. And she did set up some meetings every couple of months where we could all work together to try and address the problem. In the meantime, gathered a fantastic team of professional and passionate volunteers. And that was in the UK, so Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, England, and the Republic of Ireland. And Professor Mavis Kirkham wrote our foreword, and we all worked together to put together a book report, which was it was a work in progress for a long time. It took us 2 years. And then on 13th of November 2023, the Say No to Bullying in Midwifery book report was published on Amazon. So the Say No to Bullying in Midwifery report, which was published in November, the team of people that we had working together, we have me, Patricia Gillen, Janine Webster, Jenny Wyland, who works in London, Becky Miller, Janine Webster was the Republic of Ireland, Karen McEwen, who was actually my old student, Elsie Gale, Deborah Hughes, and Andrea Laurie from Scotland. We had some beautiful artwork, which was provided free of charge by somebody called Matt Mahorin, who, when we asked him if we could use his artwork, we found out he was a very, very famous artist in Los Angeles who'd actually done the album cover for Tracy Chapman. And he was pleased to, I mean, it's a perfect example where you've got the little girl by a cliff with nowhere else to go, with a tall person standing over her. But if you look at the picture behind, you've got all the shadows in the background, which are the bystanders who stand by and do nothing. And we realised that because of in the profession, there's an awful lot of that, because people are really worried about joining in, because if they join in and stand up, they may be next. So an overview of the report, it ended up being 157 pages long. There's accounts of bullying and harassment from 230 student midwives and maternity support workers, including midwives from academia and clinical managers. We ended up having 6 chapters, and the volunteers took on a proportion of the work. Jenny Wyland did newly qualified midwives and student midwives, because she's a lecturer and a clinical educator. Becky Miller ended up doing continuity of care and carer, because we found out that midwives were working in excess of 27 hours without a break. And then that was divided into workload and safe care. Patricia Gillen, who was a doctor in Northern Ireland, did Why Midwives Leaves, which is a huge proportion of the book. We then joined it with the role of the unions, because a common theme that were coming through that were people were having suboptimal union representation, and that was certainly the case with me. And so that needed exploring. And then reports and current strategies of what was happening at the time being. We didn't add a section on solutions, because we realised that the problem was so big that we needed to have a multifaceted approach from all the different departments. When it was published, we distributed it. The distribution was the Health Service Journal took an exclusive, and it was also published in The Independent, The Telegraph, The Daily Mail and The Sun. Unfortunately, on the day that it came out, they also had a government reshuffle, which knocked it off, took the limelight off it a bit. We did publish the book, but it's not for profit. We did a really nice, it's a really nice book with the colour inside, and we did it because we thought if the only thing that it does is it gives closure to the people that have participated and they've got their words in it. It's something that they can hold to themselves and say, this has got my words in it. We also provided we provide a PDF, which is free, so anybody can read the report, and they can get it through the ARM website. We sent out 600 PDFs to heads of midwifery, chief midwives, chief executives, unions, the NMC. Like I say, the PDF is downloadable via the ARM website shop. We sent hard copies to 33 key MPs and peers, and hard copies and ebooks we sold 450 via Amazon and at conferences. And I've sent out a lot of copies to other people as well. Pass on to Deb.
So at this point, I was going to read one of the narratives sent in. It's just sorry to say, it's quite a familiar, fairly typical sort of narrative, which is shocking to say, really, but it encapsulates a lot of the issues that I'm sure many midwives experience. So this, and this is just half of this midwife's narrative I'm going to read. I was first bullied early in my career by my team leader, who picked on me, pulled my notes for minor errors, and made it clear she didn't like me. In 2000 and XX, I was involved in an incident where I was unfairly and unjustly treated by the midwifery management structure, not just my opinion, but that of many colleagues, consultant obstetricians, and my union rep. As soon as I tried to discuss my case, management shut me down, took me out of clinical practice, and the nightmare began as I fought to clear my name and save my career. I had just returned from a year out doing an MSc. After a torturous year, I did, but was so disgusted with my treatment and lack of support, I left that trust to go elsewhere. However, the damage was done. My physical and mental health was so damaged by the process that I could no longer cope. I had PTSD from the bullying and the incident had started smoking again. I had quit 3 years previously and was self-medicating with alcohol on a regular basis and had even contemplated suicide. I couldn't sleep well, had recurrent nightmares, and my blood pressure needed urgent attention, being 200 over 120. I had to leave clinical midwifery before it killed me. Since leaving, I have recovered, but I'm still in contact with midwife friends from this trust who tell me it's worse than ever. Midwives being told it's either the management's way or they can leave, and many do, and all they want are reasonable working conditions and flexible working as they have children. Yeah, and Amanda's going to read one from a student midwife.
The student stories were the worst for me. They were the most impactful for me because I was the person that received all the stories. I actually had access to these people's Facebook profiles, and I'd see these young women, and they were all women that contributed to the book. I think we had one male, but these young women who had just started out on their working educational life, who were 20, who were now 2 years into their career, into their midwifery. They'd been torn to pieces, had mental health issues, and were actually now £20,000 worth in debt. And that was their first experiences of work. One student said, if I dared ask questions, I'd have a dressing down quite publicly in front of other student midwives, doctors and families. Another said, undermining us in front of staff and women, criticising our knowledge and skills, chipping away at our confidence on every shift. Another said, it was my lifelong dream. It became my nightmare.
So at that point, I think, it's really hard words to hear. The book is a difficult read, as Sue said. But at that point, if people want to go, I don't know what you do in a pause, Sue, but this was going to be our pause. So, okay, so pause. And then we're going to go on to say, well, why is it still happening after we've published this book? Surely it's obvious to everybody, it just needs to stop. So first of all, we're going to look at the bigwigs. So we sent this report out to everybody. We're all busy working people, but we sent it out to NHS England, to directors and heads of midwifery, to the Nursing and Midwifery Council, to the Royal College of Midwives, heads of midwifery education, to chief executive officers of trusts, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and to the other main unions. And you can see here their responses. There weren't any. So nobody thought it was worthwhile publicising it or writing an editorial or speaking about it or inviting anybody from the group to speak about it. And that's really disappointing. So I think the first reason why there's still bullying in midwifery is because our leaders, or the people that are representing us or leading us or who have clout and power, for whatever reason, I don't know whether they're not interested or they feel incapable of tackling it or whatever, but whatever it is, I think they need to get together and talk about what's holding them back.
I sent out 600 PDFs and we got one response, and that was from the Scottish Government.
So, and I took 33 copies to all the key MPs in Parliament. That was every member of the Health Committee, the chair of the Women and Equality Committee, the Secretaries of State, the key health ministers, the opposition spokespeople on health and women's affairs. And again, absolutely zero response. However, it wasn't not a complete wall of silence.
On the 16th, well, Lord Philip Hunt secured a 10-minute debate in the House of Lords, which was incredibly exciting because most of us hadn't met each other apart from on Zoom, and we worked incredibly hard to pull this piece of work together. So 6 of us managed to get down to the House of Lords on the 16th of April 2024. Questions were asked by Baroness Julia Cumberledge, Lord Lucas, Lord Hunt, Lord Boating, and many more. And I think one of the highlights for me was looking down, and David Cameron was scrolling on his phone whilst they were discussing it. So in Scotland, Andrea Lorries had quite a lot of success and met with 5 key MSPs. In England, Maternity Task Force set up 3 years ago that was a new chief midwife, but we haven't actually had any official acknowledgement of the book or report or any recommendations to date. Donna Rockenden did write to us, and she said, "Many thanks for such an important piece of work. So many frontline staff will be so grateful to you," which I thought was quite an unusual turn of phrase, because it said so many frontline staff will be so grateful to you, but it doesn't mention the leaders.
No, they won't be so grateful.
Yeah, but we had a great day out, and you can see pictures of us all there with our books. Yeah.
So, undaunted, the new health committee has been elected. So the new health committee is now formed, and so is the Women's and Equality Committee. And so they are now going to get copies, and as will the new ministers. So those will be going off soon. All party parliamentary groups have also been formed, and there is not a single APPG relating to maternity. So we're now having a bit of a discussion about that. But the Health Committee and the Women and Equalities Committees are formed. And one of the Health Committee happens to be my local MP, so I'm sure he'll get to know me quite well now. So, and also we're going to follow up with lack of response from the leading organisations. So I did corner Andrea Sutcliffe before she left the NMC, and she said, "Oh, it's by her bed and she is going to read it," and then she left. But the new NMC CEO will have to have a copy, and there's a new chair of the council of the Nursing Midwifery Council. And the reason why the Nursing and Midwifery Council is so important is because many of the referrals that they receive about midwives, and indeed about nurses, the stories of those referrals are often rooted in stories of bullying. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that. And as far as the Royal College of Midwives go, I really don't know whether it's worth trying to engage with them again or not. And I think Amanda's, you're not sure either, are you? So if anybody would like to come back to us about that, we'd listen to you. So why is there still bullying in midwifery? I'm now going to look at the Nursing and Midwifery Council. My I didn't know a lot about the Nursing Midwifery Council in 2017. I'd been to a couple of hearings. I was a supervisor of midwives, and you know, we had to go and sit in on some. A couple of friends of mine had been referred way in the past when it was still the UKCC. But I know a lot about the Nursing Midwifery Council now. I've spent hours and hours and hours there sitting in cases. And I think why it's important is because I think it has created a climate of fear. That midwifery is full of anxiety now, not about to do with the uncertainty of birth, but everybody is very busy looking after their NMC pins. And I would say that often that looking after your pin takes precedence over looking after a woman. And this is affecting behaviours throughout the profession. It's insidious. It's been a long time building up, but it's there. And in my view, the Nursing Midwifery Council is an unfit regulator. I believe it can't be reformed. It should be abolished, but there is some work going on now under Professor Nancy Fontaine to try and transform the fitness to practice directorate and process. And I've got a lot of time for Professor Fontaine, but I think she's got her work cut out with this. The NMC is lawyer-led. It employs vast numbers of junior lawyers in a sort of rotating door situation with the Crown Prosecution Service. Its processes are incredibly slow, scandalously slow. Its approach is very punitive. It's very much about blaming and finding fault with people. It's very much picking on individual registrants and not the system or the context. It's very much indeed picking on band 5 and 6 practitioners or band 4 nurses, 4, 5, 6. You do not see people from band 8 appearing before the Nursing Midwifery Council because apparently all the things that happen have nothing to do with them. It's very wasteful. It's not only wasteful of registrants, because registrants who've been through the process are not usually retained, they leave, and it's wasteful of resources. If you want to know where your £30 a quarter go, I would say down the drain for the most part. And unbelievably, given that anybody who looks at the Nursing Midwifery Council, I think would just be horrified. Many trust and university fitness to practice processes have now been modelled on the Nursing Midwifery Council, the very last thing that they should be modelled on. So I think as a profession, we need to move towards a new model of professional discipline. It needs to be midwife and lay expert led. I think it probably needs to be more regionally located as well. It needs to be quick. Its emphasis should be restorative, with emphasis on learning and insight. It should look much more root causes. As I said, many of the midwives who appear before the Nursing Midwifery Council fitness to practice panels, their story is the foundation of their story is bullying. It should be retented unless somebody is clearly psychopathic and unfit to practice. It should aim to keep people on the register. And I think that one of the things that we don't understand enough, and I think, I'm a big fan of Benner, if anybody out there remembers the work of Patricia Benner, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes as midwives. And that's how we learn to be better midwives. And the intolerance of mistakes is having a detrimental effect on professional development. So bullies aren't going to change overnight. So I think we need to do something completely different, and that is to rebuild our culture or build a culture of midwifery. And everybody needs to do that. We need to build a positive culture around ourselves, diminish the voice of the bullies, diminish their power and their influence in every setting. And one of the projects I've been involved recently, I've been helping Caroline Flint rewrite her 1986 classic midwifery text, Sensitive Midwifery. Caroline's in her 80s, and her feeling was that she needs to republish it because midwifery needs to go back to these basics. And one of the new chapters is called The Sensitive Colleague. And in there's lots of ideas about building positive culture. But this is going to involve everyone, every single midwife, student, everybody working in kindness, compassion, and thoughtfulness, which is what sensitive midwifery is about. So you need kindness, compassion, and thoughtfulness. We need to practice it. Everyone needs to practice it every shift, every hour of every shift, with every woman, every colleague, and in relation to every incident. And I really think that sitting back and waiting for bullies to change, I think it's all of us have got to come together and behave in as best we can all the time.
We said before that it was, you know, we didn't have a chapter on the solutions because obviously it needed to come from multifaceted. Obviously, there's a disconnect between the leadership and what is happening on the ground. But these were just some solutions that we did ask at the time. We just asked people what solutions they would suggest to turn this ship around, really. And some of the solutions were that every organisation should have a health and wellbeing hub, which provides support to the individual through occupational health. I now work for a different organisation and I have a fantastic health and wellbeing hub, which is wrapped around the employee, which actually works really well because it frees up the management to do the managing rather than the managing the workforce. But it offers a lot of support to each individual employee. Solution-based training for all staff on bullying and harassment, focusing on organisation and individual responsibility. Better education and auditing of mentors and managers. You know, we all know, we've all had the stories where the same mentor has got a bullying mentor has basically annihilated numerous members of, you know, students or other members of the team, and that should not happen. So if they had an audit, a feedback thing for each mentor or manager, maybe people would be a little bit better behaved if they knew that they were going to get called out on it. When problems are reported, they need to be dealt with, not ignored or dismissed, and in a way that has a lot of integrity and accountability. Because all too often now, anybody mentions it and they end up being called out, or they end up with an investigation for poor practice. It's just shifting the blame and not addressing the problem. Independent speak-up guardians with time targets for responses, and mean independent speak-up guardians maybe in a different trust, one trust working for another trust, not having the independent speak-up guardians in that trust dealing with the problems in that trust, because again, things can be brushed under the carpet and are. Sufficient admin staff, support staff to support midwives and maternity support workers, both clinically and in academia. That would help massively. It's about making the jobs easier because they're providing more support. Flexible working. We find that we're in a system that is so short-staffed. You know, we are predominantly female, and females will have babies, but the amount of people who said that they wouldn't be flexible around people having babies is just ridiculous, because those babies are going to grow up in 16 years' time, and that member of staff will still be a midwife, and then they will be able to support other people that are having babies. So looking at things in the long term, proper payment, proper rest hours for being on call. There was a big section on where community midwives were used to prop up the delivery suites and labour wards when they were on call, which led to midwives working a whole shift, then ending up on delivery suite overnight and then doing their own shift. And that is unsafe, both for midwives and mothers and babies. And that needs to be more regulated, properly paid, and people need proper rest periods. And all senior managers need to work on the front line on a regular basis. And I think this is really important, because managers now, I know in my day, the managers, you know, heads of midwifery will be able to get down onto the delivery suite, roll their sleeves up and clean a floor, clean a floor, go and scrub in theatre, look after women in labour. I think now, because the higher up you get now, the more academic qualifications you've got, and I think that we've lost some of the clinical expertise, not with everybody, obviously, but a lot of the managers, I know certainly in my case, they didn't have the clinical expertise which is needed to know exactly what's happening on the front line, and that makes for leadership that is underconfident in the clinical expertise, and then they're more likely to surround themselves with sycophants and stay away from the front line instead of being part of the front line. We think that's really important. Yeah. Okay.
So finally, just encourage you to really, read this report, because I think it will change everybody's view that reads it, that, we can't let this go on. And this is where you get copies with the QR code, that's what they're called, isn't it?
QR codes,
yes. And that will take you straight to them. And it is the most comprehensive analysis of a very toxic midwifery culture, which we've heard about in all the reports, Curator, Ockenden, whatever. It handicaps us all, and it has to be changed. Thank you very much.
Please join the Say No to Bullying in Midwifery group. Like I say, we do ask questions. They are immediately deleted by myself. I don't memorise or keep any information whatsoever. Reach out to us if you need support. We do say to put things on anonymously, because it has right at the beginning, we did get people shotting conversations, and it did backfire, but this is 2017. We're much more careful now. So don't make sure that everything's anonymous, that you don't name your trusts, you don't name people, you don't name yourself, and you will get a lot of support from people. And no question is a silly question.
Thank you.
Thank you.